Hey there, welcome back to the Agile Couple. So Leanne and I wanted to share a few brief little pointers with you. This is all related to the empirical process. And specifically, we talk about establishing transparency, which then gives us the ability to inspect the work and then finally be able to get those feedback loops and be able to adapt to any type of changing requirements. So we want to have a really focused conversation here and get you in and out in just a couple minutes. So Leanne, when we talk about transparency, what comes to mind as far as the benefits of transparency to you?
Benefits is everybody's on the same page generally. We did have an episode where we talked about radical transparency, but just simple transparency is everybody's on the same page and you know that everybody's in the same conversations or accessing the same information.
Yeah. And some of the challenges that we've run into working with clients is sometimes not everybody is necessarily in line with that transparency for whatever reason. That kind of leads to, other topics we've talked about as far as like the obfuscation and the siloing of information. But the one thing that we can say is when there is transparency and you've got that visibility established, it truly helps the organization and from a cultural standpoint as well, get everybody in alignment because as you mentioned, it gets everybody on the same page. But you have to have buy-in, from the organization in order to do that. If you have, as we've shown, historically, if not everybody's on the same page, then you're kind of barking up the wrong tree.
You're all rowing in a different direction.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times transparency stops happening, not necessarily because the intent is to, sometimes the intent's there, but sometimes it just goes adrift because human behavior, you get busy, you get stressed, you get these things. So you have to have some sort of guardrails put in place
Yeah.
to come back and go, okay, we've kind of gotten off course. I just heard from Susie and Susie's telling me that she didn't know that we had talked about this and I was sure I shared whatever the situation is. You're right. I didn't. I forgot that I talked to Kevin and I didn't share it with the group. That's on me. How do we get back on course? You need to have some sort of way to regulate it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things with the transparency is once again, what it's doing is it's helping us to establish those feedback loops. So if you got a project that is ongoing, the ability to inspect and say, okay, at this point in time, where are we at? That's that second pillar in that empirical process, the ability to inspect the work itself. And it's very hard to inspect if you don't have that transparency established beforehand, right?
Yeah. I think also people need to take the egos, which is challenging because we're dealing with people. But when you're actually truly doing inspection, if you're driven by your ego, you're not really open to actual true feedback. So it's got to be an open kimono, as we always say. Like it may hurt a little bit, but it's going to hurt a lot worse if you don't just deal with the problem. So a lot of people say they want to refine, they want to improve things, but they don't really, and they might maybe work against that. So, but you can't have. I mean, you kind of kicked us off talking about the 3 pillars of empiricism, which is really when we talk about agile, it comes from Scrum. And to me, it's it's everything of what people need to do to communicate. Very simple. We can talk about them today. Makes total sense to everybody. But as soon as you get with a group of people and you start doing your regular work, the walls go up, things happen because there's some fear or there's ego or there's different things that come into play. So you have to know that it's not all rosy. You and I know this and we run into this regularly. So you have to be able to be transparent in the conversation, air your dirty laundry a little bit, and let's get back on course.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of it comes down to as well, making sure that everybody is one of the challenges with the transparency that scares people is there's an accountability aspect of it. Right. And in Scrum, for example, when you do your daily scrums, that's part of that transparency. Every day you're getting together and you're saying, this is where we're at. These are the blockers and such. But because of that cadence on a daily basis, there's a level of accountability. You don't want to come in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you don't have any progress.
Shouldn't have surprises.
You shouldn't have any surprises, right?
Actually, I mean, we're definitely talking about this from software teams, but I was even just thinking about because some of our clients are going through their annual review right now. There's no reason that shouldn't be the same sort of feedback loop and cadence throughout the year and definitely throughout a quarter or a month. Nobody should be getting surprised that they're not getting a bonus or that they've not met expectations. It's the same thing. It's just refining it for whatever it is you're doing and putting that into practice.
Yeah.
So the inspection should come both parts. So if I'm your manager, I should have given you goals. I should be working with you. And if I'm falling short or you're falling short, we should be having those conversations. How do we get back on course? What are we still expecting? Or what's changed? How do we address that, right? And so we're transparent about it. We both see the same things of what we're working towards. I probably have to give that information up the channel. You should know where you're at any point. And then the inspection is we're looking at the goals. How are you actually doing? And you know what? You hit this one out of the park, but I think this one's more important now. Can we shift gears? And we're inspecting as we go to make that improvement. And then the third pillar would come into play. So what's the third
So
pillar?
the adaptation, which is basically based on having visibility into the work, the ability to see where you're at, the adaptation phase is really what do we need to change in order to make sure that we're delivering the business value necessary or delivering on this particular initiative.
Right.
And that adaptation is important. And the same thing, it's like you can go for months and not adapt, but you look at all of that time that's been wasted as opposed to, okay, we're going to have the ability to adapt every couple of weeks or based on our daily interactions. You know, once you get into that mode of establishing transparency and inspection and adaptation, this pattern is so prevalent, regardless of what business you're in. It's human nature. It's how we communicate. And you want to have those rapid feedback loops so that you can adjust, accordingly.
Yeah.
And when you go too far and too long without adapting, then you kind of lose the benefits of that whole process.
Yeah, and you should be documenting along the way. So, I mean, my background before getting into tech was HR, and that's the thing that makes me want to pull every last hair out of my head, is that people have massive problems because they haven't been doing these things and they don't document it.
Yeah.
I don't know, there's fear involved in that, and I don't know why, but it doesn't really matter. The point I'm trying to make is it doesn't matter if we're trying to build a project together or I'm dealing with employees that we're trying to get them to, develop and to improve. Even the adaptation and that whole, the 3 pillars process, as the manager, I would hope that you have ownership in where you're going if you're my employee. And if I'm not giving you what you need, we need to have that open communication. So I'm not it's not a one-way blame thing, right? But it turns into that, or people feel fearful. Yeah. Given there's different relationships, but if you can start to make it where it's part of the process and you as the leader have to go, I didn't do a great job there. Let's reset. Let's come up with these. What else do you know? How else can I help you? Let's check back, maybe more frequent. Maybe we need to have more feedback loops, which this also comes to play because you and I have just dealt with this and we're hearing from other colleagues that have managers with too many direct reports. You can't do these sort of things when you've got too many people that are downstream downstream from you. Yeah. Right. So it shows up in lots of different places is what we're trying to say. It's not just you're only going to talk about this when you're a scrum team. I think it shows up everywhere.
Yeah. And I think part of it too, as a leader, you have to be situationally aware. Not everybody is going to be handled the exact same way. Some people require more attention, other people require less.
Right.
As a good leader, you need to be able to recognize what is specifically needed for each one of those situations. Otherwise, if you blanket statement, and treat everybody the exact same, you're going to take those high performers, they're not going to feel valued, and you're going to take those that really need to be improving, and they're not going to understand that they're not hitting the mark.
Right.
So that situational leadership, I think, is really important as well. You have to understand, who is on your team. And when you've got too many direct reports, it diminishes your ability to do that.
Well, and I would say just somebody that is performing and doing well doesn't mean that you should not have those FaceTime feedback loops with them because they will feel undervalued or not recognized or whatever the motivators are.
Yeah.
You need to have it. Maybe the amount of work and time that it takes for you is going to vary by the people, but you shouldn't disregard somebody because they're doing well.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's good. I think we just wanted to highlight the 3 pillars of empiricism and kind of dive into that a little bit.
All right. So we appreciate the time today. If you do have any questions or if you got any recommendations for future topics, feel free to reach out to us on our social media. That'll be coming up here in just a moment.
Thanks for joining us on the Agile Couple podcast. We try to record these sessions every week, and we don't want you to miss out on our awesome content. So make sure to like and subscribe. And we'd appreciate it if you would share this content with other people. We think it would be helpful to others. We're on all of the social media platforms from TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Podbeam, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So any way that you're watching this, please be sure to leave us some feedback, give us some likes, and share the information. If you'd like to provide us with some other ideas of content you think might be helpful for us to cover, that would be great. Or if there's other people you think that might be really helpful for us to interview, we'd love to know some of that information. So you can email us at theagilecouple@gmail.com. And like always, we look forward to seeing you on the next session, the next episode, and hope to hear from you soon.